Hello students, it's me, Teacher Menchi, and welcome to Mom Chi's Amazing Corner, your virtual classroom in Science 10. To start today's episode, let me share Mom Chi's amazing tips in order to keep your back, neck, and eyes healthy while indulging in some screen time. Sit properly. Make sure your back touches the chair's backrest and is well supported. Change your position regularly. If you are watching for a long period, take turns in sitting on the couch, chair, or floor. Keep dim lighting on. Strong or no lighting at all will lead to eye damage over time. Stretch. Give yourself a break. Change positions, walk around, and do some gentle stretches. Don't watch or do modules in bed. This often leads to neck and backache. Now, we are ready to begin by recalling what we have learned from our past lesson. We have learned about how divergent and transform fault plate boundaries move and the landforms that emerge from these movements. The objectives of today's lessons are: describe the possible causes of plate movements and recognize the process of convection current in the mantle. Before we start, let us familiarize ourselves with some science vocabularies. Now let us begin our exploration about the Earth's mechanism. Can you recall the plate tectonics theory? This theory is the modern version of the continental drift theory proposed by Alfred Wegener in 1912. The plate tectonics theory states that the Earth's lithosphere is broken up into several pieces called plates, and these plates are moving slowly or gradually. This explains the movement of the plates, divergent, convergent, and transform fault, causing subduction, earthquakes, tsunamis, and emergence of landforms like mountains, volcanoes, trenches, and others. What makes the lithospheric plates move? The decomposition of radioactive elements causes heat in the interior part of the Earth. About 50% of the heat given off by the Earth is generated by radioactive elements such as uranium and thorium and their decay products. There are three main sources of heat. The first one is the heat from the planet formed and accreted, which has not yet been lost. The second one is the frictional heating caused by the denser material sinking to the center of the planet, and the third is the heat from decay of radioactive elements. The hot fluid rises to the mantle and creates convection currents. This hot material rises as it expands, whereas cold fluid tends to sink because it contracts. Convection is one of the kinds of heat transfer. The other two are radiation and conduction. Lithospheric plates are the parts of the uppermost layer of the Earth, and they are flowing in an area called the asthenosphere. The asthenosphere is a soft, less rigid upper part of the mantle where the lithospheric plates float and move around. Plates move slowly and continuously when the hot, less dense material rises. The rising hot material cools down in a certain area. Hence, it becomes denser than the cool, dense material sinks that creates convection cell with hot rising currents, and cool sinking currents are regularly repeated and become a cycle. Aside from mantle convection, ridge push, sliding, and slab pull are the forces that move the lithospheric plates. Causes of slab pull: the presence of a heavier subducting plate pulls down the trailing slab into the subduction zone. In the ridge push or gravitational sliding process, the old oceanic crust becomes heavier than the new oceanic crust and sinks because of the weight of the raised ridge, which pushes down the older oceanic crust towards the trench and at the subduction zone. Let us summarize how convection current makes a huge chunk of lithospheric plate move. Heat from when the planet formed and accreted, frictional heating caused by the denser material sinking to the center of the planet, and heat from the decay of radioactive elements rise to the mantle. The rising hot material cools down in a certain area, and once it reaches the top, it starts to cool down, causing it to become denser. The dense material sinks and creates a convection cell, only to rise up again once it is heated. This process of rising hot materials and the sinking of denser materials goes on continuously in a cycle, causing the lithospheric plates to move. Ridge push or gravitational sliding process, the old oceanic crust becomes heavier than the new oceanic crust and sinks because of the weight of the raised ridge, which pushes down the older oceanic crust towards the trench at the subduction zone. The process of slab pull, the presence of a heavier subducting plate pulls down the trailing slab into the subduction zone. I hope you learned something from our lesson today. See you again next week for another Ag Amazing lesson. Bye!